Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of Outside the Letterbox. I think it's 26, right, guys? I didn't even check.
Yeah,
I
something like
don't
that,
know.
It's 26 or 27, so welcome. It is 26, sweet. Okay, episode 26 of Outside the Letterbox. I'm Paul Duda.
And
Yeah.
I can't believe we just did that.
I can't believe you just did that either. Try it again.
I'm Nick Van Leeshout.
And I'm Joe Campbell.
There we go.
We're off to a great start already.
Joe, I feel like you did that on purpose. We're doing this a little differently this week because we instead of film or recording this in the middle of the day or late at night, we are filming it or not even filming it, recording it in the early morning. So bear with us. Today we're just gonna skip most of our usual stuff and get right into our discussion of The Hobbit, the Battle of Five Armies. So first you can find more episodes of Outside the Letterbox on our website, the-letterbox.com, as well as on iTunes by just searching for Outside the Letterbox. Leave us a review on iTunes or comment on our site. And if you haven't checked it out, you should check out Joe's video series, Film Illiterates, with our friend Alex Patton, who's joined us on the podcast before. But they're really great. If you haven't watched them, you should give one of them a watch. Joe, which one would you recommend at this point?
I really like the new one actually of The Hobbit that we did last week.
Sweet. Not Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, but the animated The Hobbit movie.
Oh yeah, the animated 1977 Hobbit.
But yeah, you should definitely check it out. He talks about some lesser known films, and they're pretty funny to watch. So anyway, let's get right into it, guys. I'm gonna toss it to let's talk about real quick what you guys thought of the first two movies. Try and keep it short, but Nick, what did you think of the first two Hobbit movies?
Uh, I actually really kind of enjoyed the first two Hobbit movies. The first one, I think I enjoyed them both for very different reasons. I think the first one, the first one is almost, compared to any other book I can think of, is almost like a literal adaptation of the book in the sense of I know some people complain about this, but the first 45 minutes of the movie is basically just the opening of the book, which to some people, is kind of ridiculous, but to someone like me, I don't know, I really enjoyed it. So the first one I kind of love for how simple and kind of innocent it is, and it gets some of the fun highlights of the early part of the book, like the scene with the trolls done right. It's got some fun action sequences. So I really enjoy the first one, even though it doesn't really feel like a complete film. And then Desolation of Smog, I also kind of enjoyed it for completely different reasons. That's the one where Peter Jackson's changes kind of come in full force. But to me, that one I really enjoyed because it's just one of the most exciting action adventure movies I've seen in a long time. And it's something that these Hobbit movies kind of have, is they have this really great sense of kinetic energy and action where stuff just starts happening and it doesn't let up for a very long time. And some people that gets overwhelming or whatever, but for me in Desolation of Smog, it really kind of works, especially in a sequence like the burial sequence, which is a scene that in the book is just like, oh, we're just gonna escape the elves and whatever, and we get away. And in the movie, they kind of turn it into basically a theme park ride on the big screen, which I really enjoyed. It's a very particular type of action sequence that we don't really get a lot in movies these days. I feel like the closest thing we get to is like in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So I enjoyed the first two Hobbit movies, even though they do occasionally have their problems. They're not perfect adaptations. So those are kind of my basic thoughts on the first two movies.
Sweet, Joe. What do you think of the first two?
I really enjoy them also. I know a lot of people talk about the differences between all three of the Hobbit movies, and I've noticed that most people seem to talk about them like they're three completely different movies. As far as I'm concerned, the first two movies are just very, very similar, which is funny because I don't know. I really enjoy them because they're really fun, really well-made fantasy movies. I feel like Peter Jackson has a real love for kind of epic, big scale fantasy films. He doesn't do everything perfect. The movies aren't perfect, but they're just really, really fun to watch, which I really appreciate. I feel like he really has a good eye for the camera, and he's not afraid to, to have fun with it as well. I know a lot of people complain about some of his little Peter Jacksonisms, his little touches with kind of more grotesque things, like with the not the trolls, but the goblins, especially in the first movie. Or in the second one, with the barrel scene, they did some really crazy over the top stuff with Bomber in the barrel bouncing around and that kind of stuff. But I don't know, I really love them. It's a totally different tone and feel from the Lord of the Rings movies, which were more grounded, I guess, for fantasy films. But in this one, he's just not afraid to kind of just go crazy and do whatever he wants to, which I really appreciated. And I feel like the first two movies really do that very very well, while still kind of being their own thing, but not going too bizarre. So yeah, for me, they move along really well, even though they're almost 3 hours long. Just kind of fun little fantasy movies.
Well, I don't like either of the first two very much. To me, I think the best comparison for these movies to me is like Star Wars prequels. They Joe, you mentioned that they're great made fantasy films, but if you watch them closely, they're really not that well made. They're interestingly made. There's really cool action sequences. I love that barrel scene. Smaug is amazing in the second film. And there's great there's great scenes in these movies. That I really enjoy watching. Like I love that barrel scene. I think that barrel scene is great. And there's other things that I do like about them, but as a whole, I think they fail miserably. And there are legitimately scenes I think that you can see the green screen in, and I'm not exaggerating. Like you can see where the character was keyed out, and that's pretty disappointing to me for a movie that is supposed to be, a well-made fantasy film. But I think the best comparison I can make is like the Star Wars prequels, where there's somewhat of a soft spot because I like the series so much, but in the end, they're just not. These movies do not function properly. And I'm gonna ask your guys' opinion on the third one first, but I'm just gonna say real quick that not much changed with this one. But I do like parts of the first two, and I feel like I would like the whole thing a lot more if it was cut down, because I think there's so much stuff in between that makes them really tough to get through, especially if you're not already a Lord of the Rings fan or a Tolkien fan. Which is funny though, because I'm a big Tolkien fan. Like I've read the Silmarillion, I've read a lot of the history of Middle Earth, and I cannot get behind these movies. And that actually, Joe, one more thing I wanted to say is that, Joe, you mentioned the tone is totally different from Lord of the Rings. That's part of the reason I have a problem with this, not because the tone is different, because I don't think that's the case. I think Jackson tried to make the tone different, but like didn't want it to feel too different from Lord of the Rings. So what we get instead is this odd ping-ponging between really fun action sequences and then really grotesque, like serious mumbo-jumbo that doesn't feel like it fits in the movie. And in fact, a lot of it wasn't even in the book, so there's a reason it doesn't feel like it fits in the movie. But anyway, Nick, so what did you think of the Battle of Five Armies? Actually, Nick, I'm most interested in hearing what you had to say about Battle of Five Armies because you've been the most quiet about it.
Yeah. So this one was kind of a letdown for me. I still enjoyed it, but I feel like how do I say this? Well, kind of like the first movie. This is not a whole movie. It feels like the end of a movie, which it is. I think the difference though between this and like Unexpected Journey is that Unexpected Journey ends, and at least for me, I remember being in the theater and being really excited going forward. and thinking kind of like, oh, if someone came out of the projection booth right now and was like, oh, hey, we have the next movie ready to show, I would have been like, throw it on. I'm ready to stay in this world and keep watching for a couple of hours. But this one kind of is the culmination of everything that came before, and I feel like I feel like I'm a little more sympathetic to people's complaints from the earlier films because I feel like there's stuff that happened in those films that either doesn't pay off in this one or kind of doesn't go in a way that I didn't care for or whatever. So I think this one suffers more from the fact that it has to wrap up everything that they kind of threw at us before. So whereas before I was kind of like, willing to be like, all right, let's wait, let's see if this works after 3 movies or not. And now that I've seen them all, it's like, all right, I don't think it works as well as I had been hoping or whatever. Even though I still like the movies, I think I'm ready to admit that I'm ready to admit more so than I was before that there's some significant problems here.
All right, Joe, what did you think?
So, this movie is significantly different from the first two. What it is
In your opinion.
it's half an hour of closing up or finishing off some plot lines from the first two movies and setting up plot lines for this one. The other 2 hours is just a straight up battle scene. That's basically what the movie is a 2-hour battle scene. And I loved every minute of it. There's just out of all three of them, this one has most of Peter Jackson's touches, which I think is what I honestly probably enjoy most about the Hobbit movies. It's not what I enjoy most about Lord of the Rings, but about the Hobbit movies, it's one of the things I love most. You have stuff like an elf on a moose, catching up tons of orcs and beheading them because they're caught on the moose's antlers. You got giant worms, tunneling through the ground. You got Legolas riding a bat and trolls with catapults on their backs. It just kind of, there's very little substance in this movie at all, but I had a blast. I enjoyed it. It's probably my that being said, it is probably my least favorite of the 3 movies, which isn't saying a whole lot because again I do really enjoy these movies because the first 2 I never checked the time to see to see how long the movie was, even though they were really long. With this one, because there is so little substance to it, and it is just kind of all spectacle. There were a couple moments where I was kind of like, oh, okay, let's just move this along now, get on to the next beat. But yeah, I mean, as a whole, I really enjoyed it. I don't. There's not really a whole lot I think you can say about the third one, honestly.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna straight up say that I enjoyed watching this movie, but this movie is crap. Like, this movie is straight up crap. Like, it is a complete and total mess. You know how people sometimes, like, people point out plot holes in, like, The Dark Knight Rises? How did Batman get back to, Gotham City? All that stuff. This movie has so many of those that it's, like, impossible to keep track of what's going on in the movie, in my opinion. Like, I don't know how they won the battle at all. That's like there was a whole nother army coming that never showed up. There were rams that came out of nowhere, and not only rams that came out of nowhere, but rams that can apparently scale 90-degree icy surfaces. Like this movie, and then at some point in the series, I'm meant to believe that Thorin and Bilbo were friends. Like, when exactly did that happen, guys? Seriously.
At the very end.
At the very end, when they're like, he was my friend. Like, what? He was an asshole to you the whole series. The whole freaking series. I do not believe you guys were ever friends. Like, what? This movie, like, told you to feel certain things. And the sequence with Sauron and Galadriel, a.k.a. the creature from the Black Lagoon, like, what the heck? This movie, all over the place. I can't. It's funny because I went to see this with Jamie, and I told her, I was like, okay, we know how we felt about the last two. Let's just like enjoy this, like no matter what. Let's just enjoy it. We spent most of the movie just laughing at the movie because it's that bad. Like it's not a well-made movie. It is not well written. It is not well like crafted. And it's funny because there are scenes from the trailer where like those rams get introduced. Like a bunch of dwarves come riding in on those rams, apparently, but that doesn't happen in the movie. Those things just show up, and I could not get over the rams for some reason. But the whole movie, I think, is a total like mess. The scenes with Thorin, where he's suffering from dragon sickness or whatever, where you don't really know what's supposed to be going on. You don't know what the conflict is in those scenes. You just know that he's like woozy and imagining stuff. And then there's no conflict for him to like turn and suddenly like become part of the group again. He's just like he has an internal conflict that they put on screen, and all of a sudden he's back in the group. Like there's nothing. This movie is a mess, guys. Like I can't. Even regardless of you enjoying it, Joe, this is not a good movie.
No, yeah, it's just a fun movie. That's all it is. I mean, like when they introduced the Rams, I was laughing at that, and it's kind of like, yeah, suddenly Rams. I don't care. We get to see a sequence with Rams scaling a wall. We have a dwarf riding a giant warthog or whatever.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Rams and the War Pig were pretty great. I actually kind of enjoyed that.
The pig was awesome, but the dude, like that's the thing. I don't think you're supposed to laugh at most of it.
I don't know. No, knowing Peter Jackson's past, I really wouldn't be surprised if he's just like giving you stuff to laugh at. I mean, like again, like the elf riding the moose alone is just kind of so bizarre.
If he's meaning for you to laugh at, also Thranduil, is that the elf's name?
Yeah.
Almost every single shot, he looks like a like drag queen or something that's been like bitch slapped. Like every single scene, he's like looking over his shoulder like he's been scandalized or something. But if that is the case that you're supposed to laugh, then this is the worst mix of melodrama and humor that is possible.
This movie has this movie's got like it's a mix of tone issues and pacing issues, and kind of the two most egregious offenders. Like in terms of pacing, like this movie just like ends like out of nowhere almost, like the battle, Bilbo says goodbye, end of movie, and it's really surprising for a small kids book that's been turned into 3 movies that they couldn't spend more time on the ending, which it's been a while since I've read the book, but I'm pretty sure there's Thorin's funeral and there's like other stuff that happens, and it's like obviously we didn't need 10-15 minute sequences of that stuff, but it would have been nice to have at least glimpse some of that. The end also is actually kind of I know Paul's complaining about how fake the CGI is, but it's none more apparent than when you jump from Bilbo leaving Erebor to him and Gandalf riding back and then arriving in Hobbiton, where everything is all of a sudden like there's not a single frame of CG to be seen. It seems like and it took me back to the first film. I don't know if it's because obviously we're going back to Hobbiton and stuff like that. But it very much reminded me of how, even though there's plenty of CGI stuff in An Unexpected Journey, of the 3 movies, it felt the most grounded. So it kind of made me appreciate the first one more in that regard. But then also in terms of the tonal issues, there's the whole character of the Master of Lake Town's assistant.
Oh my gosh.
Who, like in any other movie, like that type of character, yeah, he's annoying, but I would have gone along with it. But he really kind of overstayed his welcome. I think there's more of him than there is of Bilbo in this movie. I know, I wouldn't be surprised. But he serves his point like I have no problem them killing off the Master, pretty much right off the bat in the beginning of the movie. And I think he has a purpose where he shows up and everyone wants to kill him, and then Bard's like, oh no, we're not going to do that. Um, and I can imagine maybe like another scene or maybe like one thing where he's like, oh, I'm going to betray these people and then show, I'm still a terrible guy. But it just keeps going and going, and then he just leaves at the end, in a woman's dress. And it's like, whatever happened to him, like,
Yeah, what the heck, man?
Yeah,
like if he had had like a horrible death or something like that, I would have at least been like, okay, it should have
There,
happened sooner, but
there's some payoff there, but he just leaves. Oh man.
his scenes were definitely the most confusing to me. I was every time they started focusing on him, I was thinking, why? Why are we focusing on this guy? I mean, like, is there gonna be some sort of payoff to it? And no, there never was. They just gave him screen time.
yeah. And
I
then
I thought his part was gonna be over, like Nick, when you said when Bard decides not to kill him.
yeah, like I thought he would just like leave or something. Um, and then one more thing is, I know Joe was talking about how 2 hours of this movie is basically a battle, but the the battle was kind of I was very 50-50 on it, and some of this might be um, hype or expectations or whatever, but so the Battle of the Five Armies is kind of this big deal, even though in the book it's like a page. I don't know. I don't remember how long it is in the book.
Bilbo gets like knocked out for it.
Yeah, but so
Which
that
is in
being
this one
said,
too.
so that,
Yeah, but except we're not focused on Bilbo during most of the series, so
but that being said, is there's a lot of great artwork and stuff that's been done over the years of the Battle of the Five Armies, and I don't know if it's because of either things Tolkien wrote or whatever, but it's all been fairly consistent. So even if it's like different artists or whatever, it kind of has a very similar look. So I was kind of expecting, I remember on Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson hired one or two of the concept artists who were just like Tolkien artists in real life, and so I was, like at first like the battle starts and it's kind of like how I'm expecting it to be, when like Dane's fighting all those orcs and all that stuff, but then they have the idea to go up to like that ice tower thing, and it's like a cool set piece, but it feels totally removed from everything else, and so I don't really care about what's happening. Like, like to me, like it would have been more. The battle as a whole would have been more satisfying if you'd kind of kept everything together and just had like people fighting on just like mounds of bodies and stuff like that. Kind of like if actually if you go back to the first film and they kind of flash back to when Erebor falls, like if it had been a mirror of that battle where it's just all these dwarves fighting monsters and whatever, and they're just like on top of each other, and there's no room for like these scenes of characters to be like, oh, we're gonna sneak around and we're gonna do this and whatever, because I felt like I felt like in trying to make the battle as character centric as possible, it it kind of made the battle feel distant and separated and not like not really connected. Like it just felt like, oh, we're gonna cut over here and we're gonna cut over here, as opposed to it's all these characters fighting to save their lives and whatever.
yeah, I think it also like I think it didn't in the end the battle didn't. I really don't think it made sense either, because if Thorin's plan was to kill was Eric, what is his name?
Azog.
Azog. I was about to call him Aragog, which is the spider from Harry Potter. But his plan to kill him, like, and thereby like, oh, their leader's dead, they don't know what to do. That result of that was never shown because we were focused on Thorin dying.
Yeah.
Theoretically speaking, if killing Azog worked to defeat their army, then killing Thorin probably should have worked the other way too.
Yeah. Also, the battle had one shot at being so awesome, and it's literally like the whole Battle of Five Armies is awesome, but there was one moment I was waiting for, and it happens, and it's over way too fast, which is Bjorn comes flying in on an eagle. He jumps off the eagle, and he has this cool moment where he transforms into a bear, lands on the ground, starts wiping people out. Now, if this was the book, this would be the moment where, Thorin gets stabbed or whatever, and Bjorn comes over, grabs his body, and just starts, plowing all these orcs out of the way to kind of save his life, and it's this awesome moment. But here he just lands on the ground, kills a couple guys for like 3 seconds, then you never see him again, and it's like, spend all that time with him in the second movie if he has a 3-second payoff?
Well, we didn't
No.
spend that much time with him in the second movie. We spent like 5 minutes with him, but
I guess I'm thinking of the extended edition, but that's beside the point.
but it's funny that you bring that up because when Jamie saw him falling out of the sky, she's read the book like quite a few times. She went, "Who is that?" The movie. I was like, "Oh, that's the bear guy."
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt if there's a whole, because Radagast kind of leads the Eagles, and I wouldn't doubt if there's a whole scene missing somewhere where you find him either recruiting them or Gandalf saying, "Oh, you gotta go get whoever," you know. But yeah, that was just like that was the one moment where I thought, "Oh, now things are going to get cool," and then it ended. It was literally one shot, you know.
Yeah. It was kind of like in Anchorman 2, where you had the werewolf, and then they never use him throughout the entire film.
That's a perfect comparison.
Actually, I want to talk about one of my favorite parts of the movie, which considering considering the rest of the movie, I almost wish I had just seen more of this. I really enjoyed this stuff probably because it wasn't part of what was in the book with Tariel and was it Feely or Keely?
Oh,
Keely.
no.
Dude, I really liked that stuff in the movie because I was like, okay, this is dramatic. This is something I don't really care about already because I've never seen it before, and you're not screwing anything up that I already like. So,
So that's one of the main things that because of this movie, I like Desolation of Smog less, because in Desolation of Smog, Legolas pops up and Tariel gets introduced, and I was expecting like a big payoff with their characters, but they have like spoilers. But I mean, are we gonna have a spoiler section, or is this just our one conversation we're having?
We already started the spoiler section. Whatever.
Yeah,
Talking about
sure you
Thorin
did.
dying.
But so Keely dies, and like I kind of knew that would happen, so I was like, oh, there would be something with her or him and Tariel, and then nothing. Like, there's earlier in the movie they're like, oh, you're banished, and then she has that conversation with Legolas's dad at the end, but then she's just kind of like standing there with his body, like there's no like, she's a character that you would have expected to be like killed off or whatever, or like you would have expected her to have the moment that Legolas does at the end, where it's like I'm going off to whatever. Yeah, so I really can't get behind it. Like I appreciate the fact that they wanted to add like more female characters, but for a book that that's this old and whatever, if it doesn't have a lot of female characters, it just feels kind of forced to be trying to stick him in. But then Legolas has like that last scene with him is so terrible because his dad is like, he's like, I can't go back, and then his dad's like, your mother loved you, and they had like one line about his mother earlier in this movie, and it's like, what are you trying to turn this character into? Because he's not like this at all in the other three movies, and there's no sense of that,
Yeah.
Like if Legolas had popped up in the second movie, like if Legolas had basically had the size of role that his dad had, I would have been okay with it. Like if he was just like there, it would have been more appropriate than, oh, we have to think of things to give Legolas to do, because the problem I have with him in this movie is like, even though it's kind of fun watching him, is that, and this is kind of true in Lord of the Rings too, is that every movie they have to kind of escalate what Legolas does so it seems more impressive and whatever, and it gets to kind of a really laughable point at this movie. Like it kind of did in Desolation of Smog, but at least it was in the context of some fun action sequences. But like when you have Thorin fighting to the death, and then you cut to Legolas and he's literally like, jumping on debris as it's falling through the air, it's just kind of like, it's such a tonal shift, literally between shots, that it's hard to go along with.
Yeah, just honestly, just like the portrayal of the elves in general in this series is a lot different and I know the Mirkwood elves are supposed to be different than the Lothlorien elves or the Rivendell elves, but the like Legolas's character is considerably different in this than it was in Lord of the Rings. And to be perfectly honest, besides the fact that he looks a lot older in the Hobbit series, and and he's supposed to be younger. He also acts, I feel like, a lot older in these, like, and that might, I think that's because the portrayal of elves is so considerably different, because in the Lord of the Rings they feel more like a lot of their relationships with people and even with each other is more out of, like, necessity and practicality, and just like, oh, we're empathetic towards what you're trying to do, so we're going to help you. Whereas in this, they just feel much more like people.
Yeah, and I mean, like, yeah, it makes sense that you say that, because even though the Mirkwood elves are different, Legolas still kind of acts that way in the Lord of the Rings. So yeah, that's like one thing, like, I remember being excited for when they said, oh, we're gonna do the Hobbit. It was like, oh, like, you can go back and there's opportunity to include, like, Legolas as a character that totally would have been there, but but when, yeah, it's like he should have been. Yeah, I guess this is the whole thing of, like, that's a whole storyline that's like, you can take that out, and that time should have been dedicated to Bilbo or something else.
Yeah, the funny, every time Galadriel was on screen in this movie, with which isn't very much, but when she was on screen, and even in this series, and she's making so much eye contact with Gandalf. I honestly wanted to yell at the screen, "You are married and you have a husband and you love him and you go back to him right now, Galadriel."
I just love the scene where Galadriel is carrying Gandalf around, because it looks so proportionately weird for her to be, like, walking around with Ian McKellen in her arms, just like, oh, hey, how's it going?
It looks like someone, like, to me it looked like someone had, like, cut him out and then just, like, pasted him around to where she was, like a drag and drop thing. Like, that scene is weird, guys.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that was another thing too. When they were talking about making these movies, they're like, oh, like, we'll have, like, some stuff to connect to Lord of the Rings and whatever, like the Necromancer and stuff. But there's either not enough of it, or then they retcon stuff to be more connected to it. Because, like, in the Hobbit, it's the goblins. I think it's the goblins from the first movie that wind up being the ones who attack the Lonely Mountain at the end of the book, and It's kind of just like, oh, they're just mercenary goblins or whatever, and it's like, cool, I can go along with that. But here they come up with, like, a convoluted reason of, like, oh, Sauron wants the mountain, which I guess kind of makes sense, but at the same time, like, it just doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't work in my head for some reason. Like, if they wanted to include all that stuff with the Necromancer and whatever, they just should have made a really awesome, like, bridge movie. Like, it should have been the Hobbit, maybe Hobbit Part 2, and then a connection movie when you could have done all this made up stuff, and we would have probably been a little more, willing to go along with it, because it would have been, all made up, as opposed to, half of something that we know and half of something that we don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was one of the biggest problems for me for the series as a whole. Just kind of seeing how it all concluded, was that I felt like they wanted to recapture a lot of the things that they did from the Lord of the Rings, but they didn't really know how to do it differently or well. For instance, the whole Tariel and Keeley love plot going on there. There's a lot of echoes of the Aragorn and Arwen romance and the battle of, oh, he's mortal, well, how are you going to deal with that, if you guys get married? Or even something as simple as Beorn coming into the battle. For me, that moment was very, very, very reminiscent of the scene in Return of the King when the Dead Army came in. But again, in Hobbit, they didn't know what to do with it. So then I feel like with this one, it's kind of like, they had a really great opportunity to deal with the Necromancer. What they should have done was just make him his own character, not make him. I mean, like, he should have, been revealed to be Sauron or something like that. But he should have just been, instead of a shadowy gif, he should have been just like, another, like, a cloaked figure or something like that was fortressed away in this old castle or whatever, these ruins. And then at the end, he sort of transforms into what we know as Sauron for the movies, as opposed to just being kind of like oh, look, that's Sauron, guys. Look at that. That's cool. all right, we're done here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I honestly thought they were going to
that's
do
tough
more with
though,
it.
because that like I think that could have made for a better like story, you know. But that's also, if you think about it, that probably would have gotten a ton of hate from fans because of that's changing quite a bit, you know. And
Mhm.
I know they changed quite a bit already, but it's like it's almost like Noah, where they hit all the specific points that are mentioned, but everything in between is like a mess. Except I think Noah's a better movie. But I don't know the whole that there were like some of the action's really cool in the movie, but there's and just like the other ones, I think there's some great moments, you know. But as a whole, it just didn't. It's just the whole series to me is a huge letdown.
I I do think the best decision they made in any of these movies was changing the title of this one to the Battle of the Five Armies. Because imagine if this movie was called The Hobbit, There and Back Again. It would just make no sense. It makes much more sense to call it Battle of the Five Armies, just because that's exactly what the film is. There's very little there and back again, just except
Yeah,
for
at
like
least
the
it's
last line.
honest. At least it's honest about what
It
it's telling you.
it is,
Yeah,
yeah. And
that's
I know a lot of people were complaining about the title change. Like, oh no, it's just showing how there's no Hobbit in it. Well, like, yeah, there is no Hobbit in it. They're just being straight up honest now.
yeah. I think they must have changed it when Peter Jackson, well, it went like he started showing parts of it, and they're like, oh, you didn't film any of that other part of the movie we wrote.
That's the extended edition, guys.
Well, I wonder. I would be really interested to see the two film cut of this because I know that the first film originally is supposed to end when they meet Bard halfway through Desolation of Smog, and I remember I'm trying to think if like the 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 version of this series as two films because obviously they still would have had to cut a lot of stuff out or else each movie would be like almost 4 hours. Um, so I wonder if like that version with them having to cut stuff out so they were actually manageable run times would have been more bearable, because it's this weird thing of like I watched the extended version of Unexpected Journey and Desolation of Smog, and it seems weird to think of like in a series that already feels like they're adding stuff, when they add more stuff, some of the stuff they've added feels better or more natural or connected to the book. Actually, there's huge sections in the second movie, the extended edition, where it's stuff that should have been in the movie, but for some reason wasn't. Stuff that's in the book. Um, so I don't know. I wonder if I'm not saying an extended version would help this movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some stuff in it that would have been, that I would have enjoyed seeing better.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, I felt like in this one especially there was some stuff that I felt like was necessary to be in there to make the movie make sense, but they cut it out because they wanted to put it in the extended edition instead. Because this is the shortest of all three movies, also, and so I'm wondering if a lot of, I mean, like for instance, the stuff like the Rams, if if they have like a scene specifically that they cut out of the movie, like maybe putting it back into the extended edition and just kind of made the movie a little bit more of a mess without having it in there, even though it would have dragged it out even longer.
It's funny that you said it's the shortest one because like it's the one that I was like, all right, let's move on.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
it feels like the longest.
yeah, I don't know if the first or second one, which of those two is the longest, but it's kind of like I said earlier, like when those movies ended, I was willing to watch more. Oh, also, I hate the beginning of this movie, but only because it should have been the end of the last movie.
Seriously, man. They even proved that by not giving you the title until like 20 minutes into the movie.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is a cool scene though. That's actually one of the scenes that I think is kind of an improvement on the book because in the book Bard just like runs out, shoots the dragon, and that's over. And I kind of like that, it's taunting him and whatever. Although I miss the doesn't Bilbo communicates to Bard with the bird. Although it seems like they completely got rid of the bird's significance in the movie
Yeah,
because
I started to feel though during that scene, I started to feel like Man of Steel levels of destruction going
Yeah.
on. So I was like, oh, he just stepped on that house. 20 people just died. Like, I guess we don't really care that much.
Well, I mean, at least it's a dragon killing people and not accidentally Superman. You know.
Accidentally Superman.
That's a great name for a band, Nick.
Or like a really bad sitcom.
um, the scene in this one where Bard is shooting down the dragon. I really like what they did with the whole Black Arrow because when his son pulled out the Black Arrow, I'm like, how the hell is he gonna fire that thing? I mean, like even if you have your bow isn't big enough to
Yeah, I
shoot.
liked how it was a very William Tell-esque kind of scene.
But
Where he's
but
like, all right, move just a little bit to the left, and I won't take
He
off your
didn't
head.
really have time to set that up, though. He set that up in the movie in like half a second.
Yeah, whatever. You know.
But it's funny because I really want to see the house should have ended with it for this be like the shaft in the air like takes off his son's ear when it's like flying past him or something. 'Cause I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
like, that does not look safe.
I also there's no way. Did he? Can you guys clarify something? Did he know about before? Did he know about the scale missing? Did he say that?
I don't think he did. I think he just kind of saw it in the moment from like
It
a mile
was
away.
either that or, like,
Exactly.
well, because his
Bard, what's your LFIC?
well, it's that or his grandfather or someone was the one who first shot the dragon, is the one who removed the spot. So I don't remember if it was something they mentioned before that he would have known, but
I don't remember honestly. Honestly, the last time I saw Desolation from Smog was when it was in theaters last.
Yeah, that's the last time I saw it too. Nick, I don't know how you've been able to spend time watching extended editions of these movies.
I was just curious, you know.
I don't know. I had 20 hours to spare. I was just curious. No, yeah, actually, it's funny. I am actually a really big Lord of the Rings fan, and back when all the other movies came out, I bought them on DVD the very first days they came out. And now I actually own the extended edition Blu-rays. But for The Hobbit, I've been specifically not buying them because I'm waiting for another year for them to release the box set of the extended edition Blu-ray, so I don't have to buy them like 5 times.
I'm not wasting money on this.
That's okay. I'll buy 2 of them for us, Paul.
Oh man, if they should sell an unextended edition where it is just one movie, I'll buy that. Even though it was never planned to be one movie, I would prefer one movie actually probably.
Well. Everyone's talking about how they should make a cut with nothing but Bilbo, kind of like the Hobbit cut of the Hobbit. What I really want to see is someone make a Hobbitless version of the Hobbit, where they just cut out every single frame of Bilbo and have it just be a story about dwarves going on an adventure.
Dude, it would probably be pretty much the same movie. I want to see. I bet they could cut together a full movie of just the Master's assistant.
Oh my god.
Alfred, the movie. Alfred, the Battle of Five Armies.
Was Alfred a character in the book? I
I
don't.
don't think he was. I mean, they may have made a reference about like the Master's servant or whatever, but I don't think he was like an actual character.
Well, but neither is the master of Lake Town. Like really, all the extent of his character is kind of like, oh, he was there to welcome them, and then as soon as the dragon hits, it was like, oh, he ran away. You know.
Guys, the servant to a side character who barely gets any mention in the book has more screen time than Bilbo and in The Hobbit.
Yeah, I honestly would have much preferred a version of the story where they just focused on Bilbo because it's supposed to be Bilbo writing the story anyway. So he doesn't even know all the crap that went on in Dol Guldur and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's why it doesn't make sense that you have those bookends. Like if you didn't have those bookends, I'd be way more willing to go with that. But since you have the bookends, a lot of people always complain about Bilbo's role in these movies, and for most of the book, he is kind of a spectator until it's a moment with the trolls or the moment with the Arkenstone or something where he decides to take matters into his own hands. But But yeah, it just seemed kind of weird to have Ian Holm narrating this and have tangents that, Gandalf obviously didn't tell him about, or it doesn't seem like he did,
I also everyone talks about how great Martin Freeman is in these movies, and while I do think Martin Freeman is a great actor, and I don't by any means mean to knock his acting ability. I don't know that I would call tilting your head to the side and opening your mouth 3 times before saying anything qualifies as great acting. Like it's literally the same sequence of acting
I
every
love
time
that.
Bilbo speaks. Did you notice that?
But it's so perfect because he's a character he's the quintessential Hobbit. So he's got all these ticks. He's got all these he doesn't, compared to Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, he is that type of character. So
Oh no, I just found it. I don't necessarily have a problem with it in the movie. Because I know I've been listing problems with the movie. I don't have a problem with his performance in the movie necessarily. I just don't everyone's like, oh, Martin Freeman's so great. That's something people say about these movies as almost like a defense sometimes, or just
I
as saying
don't
how
think it's
great
a
he is.
defense so much as we wish there had been more focus on him because he is so good.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. Because in this movie specifically, every time he shows up, he's like, and you're just like, okay.
I want to give
supporting
credit.
actor at the Oscars.
I want to give credit to another actor because even though we kind of complained about, I guess his arc early in the movie, I really like Richard Armitage as Thorin, and I think he does pretty well with the material that he's given.
Yeah,
I
but
don't know, there's just something about his performance.
Natalie Portman did well with what she was given in Star Wars too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining about that.
Well, actually, it's funny that you mentioned his performance because there was actually one scene in the movie where I kind of thought oh wow, this guy's actually. I mean, I never really thought about it, but he's doing a really good job of working with the material he has. And it's the scene where he goes up to Bilbo and he says oh, what do you got in your hand? And he's like, oh, I got this little acorn. And the way the look on his face changes, I felt like, oh wow, this guy is doing a really good job of just kind of showing emotion just from little ticks of changing his face and really showing you what the character's thinking about.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have that different of an expression, but they had before. But you can see that it's like night and day the difference between the gold sick dwarf and then the guy who kind of appreciates that this hobbit loves the smaller things and the simpler things. I really enjoyed that moment a lot.
That's actually a good point, Joe. I was fairly impressed with some of those scenes too, just because I thought Richard Armitage was doing a good job. But I was also wondering, I was like, how did Peter Jackson direct this scene? Did he goes up to Richard Armitage and he's just like, all right, Richard, I need you just feel for 5 minutes, just feel, and then just Richard Armitage is just I guess I'm kind of angry now, and no now I'm feeling a little better. No, what's going on? That's what's going on in his head.
Yeah.
He does a
Dragon.
good job. I just don't necessarily know what the point of some of those scenes are. The one with the acorn is great. I like that scene, but the scene where he's falling into the gold and stuff.
Yeah, it's too vague.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's funny. Someone posted an article. I think it might have been Badass Digest, where they were like, Thorne in these movies is basically the surrogate for Peter Jackson. He's the leader of a once great kingdom who has a devoted following, who gets greedy, and
yeah, exactly.
it was kind of funny because everyone's always like, oh, Peter Jackson, he's like a hobbit, but in this movie it was oh no, he's he's Thorin, whether he realizes it or not,
And I can't remember. I think it was one of you guys who mentioned that this theory that Peter Jackson didn't originally want to direct these movies, Guillermo del Toro was originally supposed to, which would have been interesting. And
I have something to say on that briefly, is because people always bring up and be like, oh, Guillermo del Toro was supposed to direct, how much better of a movie it would have been. And it's possible, but and again, like I don't know how much behind the scenes and how much stuff changed, but like Guillermo del Toro is still credited on all three scripts. So, whatever problems are in these movies, very well likely could have
Yeah,
carried over into
well,
his version.
I can't remember who theorized about this, but that Peter Jackson took the opportunity because somebody had to direct these movies at that point
Yeah.
because they had already spent so much money on them.
Yeah.
So someone theorized that Peter Jackson didn't really want to do it, but
Yeah.
did it and took the opportunity as more of like a technical, like play, like
Yeah.
chance to play around technically with a lot of stuff, than really caring that much about the story. And if that, I'm not saying that's true or false, but that seems like it could very well be true based on what we have.
Yeah, and especially like he's kind of made that impression in the media anyway, because he's been saying about how, however ironic this may be or whatever, but like how he doesn't care for the state of blockbuster filmmaking, and now he just wants to make these little New Zealand movies, which is very reminiscent of George Lucas after the prequels, who's kind of like, oh, I want to go do like these experimental films in my garage, which he hasn't done yet, but like, it's kind of interesting that both, the Hobbit and the prequel trilogy kind of suffer from similar kind of a things, where it's kind of like you kind of wonder why they didn't let someone else work on them, if they apparently had a problem working on them before. The difference with these is Peter Jackson had something, he had a surefire thing he could adapt, whereas George Lucas was kind of making up as he went along. So you could say that Peter Jackson kind of did the worst thing by messing up something that was such an easy thing to do. But then at the same time, like, it's still really easy to remake The Hobbit. We're stuck with those Star Wars movies as canon, whether you like them or not. So.
Yeah, that's true, but no one really cares what happened in the prequels. Like, let it go. Like, honestly, they could have just made 7, 8, and 9 without ever making the first 3.
That is very true. That is very true.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think, Joe, did you have anything else you wanted to say about it?
Just one last thing I wanted to touch upon was that talking about the technical aspect. Did either of you guys see the movie with the high frame rate, or any of the movies in the high frame rate?
I saw Desolation of Smog in the high frame rate. It was the 3D IMAX high frame rate, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. I actually thought it looked cool. Like it didn't. There were a lot of people who were like, "Oh, it looks like a soap opera or whatever." And maybe for like the first 5 minutes, but like I got used to it really fast, and I was actually, if it wasn't so busy around here with the holidays and stuff like that, I would have tried to go out of my way to see it, because we had to go to a theater like an hour away to do it when we saw it last year, so we just stuck closer to home this time. I think it works really well. It is one of those things though that I guess because of the high frame rate, it does make everything look cheaper or whatever when it's not projected in the high frame rate. So I don't really know if the benefits outweighed the disadvantages.
I saw the first one in high frame rate, and I got used to it probably after the first 20 minutes. And I actually did get a little bit of motion sickness watching it, but I think that was mostly because of how the action scenes play out, especially in that one, like the scenes in the cave with the goblins or whatever chasing after them. That felt like a roller coaster watching the high frame rate. I'm not a huge fan of it with a movie that has a ton of special effects, because even without the high frame rate, I still think a lot of the scenes showed for these movies. And with the high frame rate, it was pretty much like watching like the first Tron movie. But I would be interested in watching something like how Need for Speed, so much of that action stuff was done in practically. I would be really interested in seeing an action film like that, where a lot of it is shot practically in high frame rate. I'd see that.
Yeah. So I saw the very first one in I saw it multiple times in multiple formats, just because I wanted to compare them all. And like I saw it in 3D without the high frame rate first, then I rewatched it with the high frame rate in 3D, and I watched it high frame rate without 3D. But anyways, the second one, I don't remember how how I watched it. But this new one, I just chose to watch it with the high frame rate in the 3D because I do think the higher frame rate really helps the 3D a lot. The biggest difference is that there's a lot of moving camera stuff going on. In 3D, it's almost impossible to see what's going on. With the high frame rate, it's a lot clearer. And yeah, I'm in the same boat. Whereas where the first 5 minutes or so took me time to get used to it. But there was a point actually about halfway through this one where I reminded myself, oh yeah, I'm watching this in high frame rate. And I tried to picture it differently, but I couldn't really like notice the difference in the moment because I didn't really have anything to compare it to because I'd been watching it for like an hour at that point. So
yeah.
I think it works really well.
Part of it to me, I work with frame rates all the time at my job, and so I can you can tell if you're looking for it what the difference is. So I don't know. I don't know if it's the future of film like Peter Jackson and James Cameron want to say it is, but I'm not. I don't hate it, I guess, as much as I initially hated the idea, but I don't know. I do agree with you that it helps the 3D, but I don't know that movies that are really heavy CGI are up to the task.
Well, I guess what it does is it makes the CG look better, but then it makes all the real stuff look slightly faker, like makeup. Then it makes the realistic stuff either stand out or I'm trying to remember. It does something where it makes all the practical stuff not look good.
It makes the makeup stuff look fake. First of all, like the makeup has to be better because you don't get any. But it also makes the CGI look bad because you don't get any motion blur, and motion blur is one of the best ways to hide fake things in CGI. Because you're just blurring something so it can look real. But if you're getting extra frames in there, then when a blade of grass maybe isn't blowing in the wind, you notice it more. That's an exaggeration, obviously, but that's just how it works.
Yeah. Well, in any case, the high frame rate I think only works with the 3D. I don't think it's the future of cinema by any means. I saw the first one in 2D. It looks terrible in 2D with the high frame rate. So there's no reason why we need movies like I don't know Blue Jasmine and high frame rate.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's gonna wrap up our podcast for this week. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. I don't know when I'm gonna post this. Honestly, I'll hopefully post it tomorrow, but it's Christmas Eve and I doubt anyone will listen to it. Maybe I'll try and post it later today. But the Merry Christmas to everyone. I think our next podcast we're gonna try and do like a most anticipated / favorite of 2013, right, guys?
Yeah.
2014.
Whatever the year is.
Yeah. But anyway, Merry Christmas to everyone, and we'll see you in probably a week or so, or hear you. No, you'll hear us.
We will hear you.
We hear you when you're sleeping.
Oh, that's creepy. Anyway, all right, out. We're out. Bye.
Bye.